Welcome to the BeDadly podcast, where we discuss all things Dadly, from being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
And just like that, we are back, folks. Welcome back to the BeDadly Show. I'm Brandon Jones, your host for the BeDadly podcast. And today I have J. Michael Hall from strongfathers.com here. Strong Fathers. Man, these guys are helping fathers get more involved in the academic role of their child and helping them become more successful. And we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about getting off to a good school year. Like, how do you really get off to a good school year? How do you prepare your family and your home for a successful year in this academic year that we've got coming around the corner? And then also the important role that dads play in education. Mike, thank you for being here.
No, I'm glad to be here and glad to, talk to dads about this, particularly as we're about to start the school year. We're ramping up. We do programs in schools throughout the year, reading nights, math nights, science nights, bring your dad to school day. And so I thought, man, what a great opportunity to work with you guys and also get the word out about how much great stuff dads already do, but also what they can do really to save their sanity, but really to help their kid be successful. It actually works kind of both ways that way.
That's great. Well, tell us, our listeners, a little bit about you and how you got into this work.
So I am the father of two boys. My youngest son is 26. My oldest son is about to be 31. So all the gray hair. Two drummers, two percussionists in my life. I was an 8-year marching band dad. So raising boys is one thing. Raising drummer deaf boys is I don't know if it's time 100, but it's time 10 for sure. Right. But great guys. My wife and I have been married 33 years. Son of a coach and a teacher and farmer. I went to school to teach agriculture, became a special education teacher, did that for 5 years. I am a recovering middle school principal, as I tell people. So I did 4 years as a principal, went back to the classroom for another year based on some of the stuff I did in fatherhood, because I could be a good principal or I could be a good dad. But at that time, even though I think other people can do it, I could not. So we made that change and then started getting into this work from the school side. And then we're going into our 20th year at Strong Fathers. And so that's what's got us into this. And we've been, all over the country, parts of the world. And we just continue to see the need for dads, but also really dads are ready to go. They just need, hopefully, some of the stuff we drag along with us to let them know.
I love that. And what does Strong Fathers do? You guys do these things for the schools? You give them basically packets for fathers to work together with their children and get involved?
Yeah, so it is pretty much event based because this is really about reaching kids, right? Kids need strong fathers. Schools have all the kids. And so being an educator, I'm like, well, that's where I'm going to go get all the dads to help their kids. So we do a bring your dad to school day where the dads go into class for about 45 minutes, see a regular day. Like, we don't want it to be some kind of special program. They need to see lunch counts and pledges and center time and carpet time and, class changes, all the things that happen in the morning, just so dads get a good view of what's really going on in the classroom, because it's changed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And then we typically do 3, maybe 4 programs a year. We have kind of this standard curriculum that we use that we wrote. And then we train people to do as well. So our job is to show up, give you all the materials, do the program in English and Spanish, provide the materials, do the whole thing, clean it up, and walk out. We can't be everywhere. Not everybody can afford for us to do that, even though there's some funding for that. And so we also train people to do that. We just trained 150 people in the state of Kentucky or 150 schools to be doing this year, those 4 events, so dad and kid math, dad and kid reading, dad and kid science, plus bring your dad to school day. We really hadn't figured out how to do a social studies night for pre-K 5. So, if that comes up, we'll do it. But really, most people are looking at pushing reading, math, science. Mm-hmm. And that's our way of connecting dads to kids, because that's our mission. And so I speak at conferences to get that done. I do, I've got several schools that we're about to go out and train. We do our own boot camp for people to come to us for a couple of 3 days to train them on father and family engagement. I'm right now writing a curriculum. I'd like to tell my friends I'm writing a breastfeeding curriculum. They're like, what? But it's a curriculum for health departments to reach out to dads and show them how they support mom in breastfeeding. So the push is to increase breastfeeding and or the length of breastfeeding. And there's a ton of research about how dads support that, makes that a healthier baby. So I'm very kind of happy and proud to be doing that. And so we've written several curricula. Everybody's like, you ought to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, but my curriculum helps a lot of people. Also, there's a higher price point, so I'm okay with that too.
Right.
But I mean, we've been a part of books, we've written magazine articles to do what we do. But yeah, that's what we do, is either do it ourselves or show people how to do it, because that in a school year really helps get dad on board, reminds them, encourages them, maybe tells them for the first time how important their role is in education.
That's exactly where I wanted to go to next. So we do know that fatherhood, the father being involved with the child is huge. Okay. That's kind of almost like a duh kind of thing.
Right.
But there's a really important role for dad when it comes to the education that we don't necessarily talk about. But how important is the role when it comes to the dad being involved in obviously the education side, but all of it? How important is that role?
Well, and that's kind of the interesting part, is when they hear what I do, they're like, yeah, because when dads are involved, it's less teen pregnancy, less juvenile crime, more likely to graduate, more likely to seek out post-secondary education. All that's true. And there's not a thing wrong with that. But what do they do for kindergartners? What do they do to help in reading? What do they do? And so we'll talk a little bit maybe later about when dads are physically involved with their daughters, like high fives and hugs and wrestling with their daughters like they wrestle with their sons. Their daughters do better in math and science.
Wow.
Okay. And it's like, oh, you mean like when they're doing homework? No, it may be that they don't do homework, but they do hug, it's not about that piece, but there are specific things that dads do to help with literacy, numeracy, definitely behavior. So Strong Fathers got started from my work over 3 or 4 years, from being a middle school principal. And every kid coming through my office with a behavior or academic issue either had no dad at home, which some people would expect, right, based on what we kind of know.
Right.
But a lot of kids had a dad at home that wasn't connected to their education. Mom came up and tried to fix things, or mom came up and made excuses, or, dad was just, even if he was in the home and even possibly in the picture with the kid, he wasn't involved in their education. So we're not all working with, non-custodial dads, or, everybody has kind of these at-risk dad thing. We're all at risk if we're dads, but just to help dads understand that when you do this, this kid is going to do better in these things right now. It's not just about graduation and, juvenile crime. It's like you give the socio-emotional learning that your kid has, the behavior that they have in school and therefore in other places, because school's kind of that incubator for how do you get along in the real world, right? You've got home. School is that kind of safe, hopefully safe place for a kid to kind of learn how do you navigate this world around friends and peers and pressures and all that. And that's where I think we need dads more involved. And of course, we have some schools that don't want to talk to us because they don't want parents at all. It's not just dads. They don't want parents. Some schools don't want dads because there's issues around men or how they think about men. We're always fighting that as well. And then some of it is they just don't know what to do with dads. And so that's where we tend to get called in a lot of times. But yeah, down to those specific things. So I also work with Head Start, which is either 0 to 3 programs in early Head Start, or 3 to 5-year-olds. And there's a ton of data about that as well, down to very minute pieces, right? And so that's kind of our job, to go out and say, look, you have a very specific role when we lay some of that research out, right? And we say, this is what happens when you do this. A lot of our programs are deficit based. For fathers is, you're broke, let's fix you. And our job as Strong Fathers, like, look, when you do this, these great things happen for your kids. I'm not telling you whether you're doing that or not. That's up to you to decide. So dads get to go, ooh, I am doing that. That's a good thing. Or no, I do need to do that. Like, I don't read to my kids as much, but I need to. because he just told me it was important and it was different than what mom does. You know, and that's a lot of our work, is that dads are not second string moms ever, but
Yeah, I
also
saw that in your.
particularly.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Saw that in
Yeah.
your TED talk. It was a fascinating thing that you mentioned about how looking at when a mother walks into her room, the child's heartbeat lowers. They get more like relaxed and whatever. But when the father walks in the room, there's kind of more of an alertness. There's
Yeah,
got to be some
6 weeks old, 8 weeks
significance to
old,
that.
2 months old. This is
Wild.
not like, oh, because I get that stuff blown back at me of it's enculturated into our children about the patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
an 8-week old
Wow.
has not studied the patriarchy. Just so you know, the 8-year-old is going, that's mom, and she feeds me, and she's got that tone and that touch. And I remember her voice sounds really familiar to me, right?
Right.
But if dad's around during pregnancy and he's talking to that baby and reading to that baby, the baby will respond to dad's voice the first day. Right? Like when dad speaks to him. Michael Jr. is a Christian comedian. I don't know if you've ever seen his video, where they did this and didn't see it until later. They watched it, even when the kid was older, and they realized the kid calmed down in the postnatal when the child was born, and they took him to clean him up, do the test and all that. When the dad would talk to it, the kid would calm down the day they were born.
Wow.
And so that's the thing that's really fun for me, because it's not my opinion. It's all the research, right? It's all right there. We just get to share it and try to organize it in such a way that it makes sense to dads. And that it's not just about, the brokenness of everything. It's like, you're going to screw your kids up. That's the rule. That's how that works. That's how the world is. That's how life works.
Yeah.
What if we could reduce the amount of therapy our children needed as adults? What if we could prevent some things because of the work we're doing every day, down from the first day they're born to what am I doing about kindergarten? And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about with school stuff, is we can do some really simple things to make our kids successful kind of all the way through those times.
Yeah, I was just writing some, you're always writing. We're writing blog stuff. We're writing different things, writing emails. And I was writing about, some dads believe investing in coaching, investing in a parent course or something is a waste of time and money.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you haven't seen how much money and time it takes when you're dealing with this,
right.
Behavior challenges, kids that are, not really being respectful and things like that. The arguments that go on in the house, the amount of frustration, the cost that it costs for therapy for you to get that, mess cleaned up from you overreacting and stuff like that. It's way more expensive to try to do it after the fact. So.
Yeah, I'm involved. Like, my work is around fathers for the sake of children. And I tell people, this is really not about hairy-legged men, but I'm also involved in work with hairy-legged men. And a lot of that work is them going deep into the messages that they got, sometimes from dad, a lot of times,
100%.
but also from mom, culture, church, got it from nowhere. Like, everybody was very well-intentioned and did something, but we caught it when we caught it. And these guys have drug all this stuff with them. Now, going back to that, on my best day, my positive message to my kid could have been taken some other way.
Of course.
When I'm not intentional, some of those things came out. They would never want my son to think about himself, right?
Yeah.
But it's there, but it goes back to the more we can do, the more we can prevent, the more forward thinking we can be. And that's the whole point, is you've got to be intentional. And just like you talk about on coaching, particularly if you're coming across either something that wasn't like you, like we have kids that are not exactly like us, or what didn't work for us, right? We're like, that didn't work for me. And we have this intention to, like, I'm going to do better than maybe my dad did or my parents did, or however that works. But you got to know. So what the research says and what practical experience tells us is, at the point of stress, you return to what you know. Right. So if your dad was like my dad and had a short temper, I don't want to be that way. Well, when the kids would do that, I would feel that come. Like, I had a lot of grace from my dad once my kids were growing up, because I'm like, oh, now I see how I felt, but now I need to put a gap between how I feel and what I do. And that goes back to what you're talking about on coaching, is I'm just lost as a dad, but if somebody can help me from the outside in, knows what's going on with what you do, I think there can be a lot of success there. And, and I was the dad that thought I kind of had it figured out too. I didn't go to jail. I can do this. And luckily, as far as I know, my 2 adult sons have not been in jail. And if they have, it was for a very short time. So, I mean, but yeah, so, I mean, I think there's a ton of value in that. And I think we've just got to continue to look at that for the sake of kids. And honestly, like you said, coaching now saves you a lot of stuff down the road. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it can save you a tremendous amount of time and energy. And I just want to say, I'm not saying that to promote myself. I'm saying that I know from firsthand experience the therapy that's required, not just for, like, I've had to do it for myself regarding my father.
Right.
You don't want to set your kids up for having to do this kind of work too, even if you're well-intentioned. And of course, we all do. We're going to mess up our kids. So that, like how that's the rule. It's going to happen. Every person makes mistakes. It's part of the formula. I really love one of the guests I had on. He says, mistakes are part of the formula. Your mistakes plus their mistakes are what equals their being. And that's a great thing. So mistakes are just a good part of this formula too. So we got to have a little grace there. How do we get started off to a really good school year? We want to have a good school year. I know for me, when I see the calendar rolling close, I got 2 feelings inside. One feeling is, I'm actually looking forward to that structure. I actually, the structure I dreaded, now the chaos of summer has set in. I'm actually looking forward to a little bit of that structure. Thought number 2 comes in, and this is really more of a previous thought. I don't really think that this way as much, but I do remember very firmly thinking that little concerned about how this school year is going to go. A little concerned. Are we going to be successful? Are we going to have the power struggles over homework? Are we going to have the teacher conferences where we don't feel good about what's going on? Are we going to have the behavior challenges? And I'm concerned. I want to figure out how to make it a better year. How do we do that?
Yeah, so I'm a public school teacher. My wife was a public school teacher. Both my sons were public school teachers. My sister's a teacher. My brother's a teacher and coach. My dad was a coach. My mom's on the school board for the second time at 78. Okay. So we are public ed people. Yeah. Sunday lunch, which, we don't have as much since my dad has passed, but Sunday lunch was all about war stories, past and present. Right. And so I say that to say that I'm a big advocate for public ed. And I want us to support our teachers in public ed and all of that. But yet it is a system that is fraught with peril. And we are, like, as a principal, I was always like, why can't we put 185 days together that work? Well, you got a staff of humans that have all their own business going on. There's another word for business, but we'll stick with business. They have all their own business going on. And then we're bringing in, like, I was a middle school principal with 930 hormonal, pre-hormonal 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. That's beyond herding cats, right? Like, it's like herding mercury, right? That's just that liquid hormones is what I kind of think it was. But that was the challenge. And so even in the best of systems, everybody's got to be on their job, and particularly if we're going to do it for kids. And that's our bottom line. And like you said, we can, parents jockey for that right school. They jockey for that right teacher. And then, and our kids had great teachers, and our kids had some teachers that were very questionable, particularly from 2 parents that knew the system, knew what good teaching looked like, had been trained by some really good people. And so you had all that, but it's still exactly like you said, am I going to get a call? What's going to go on? And even, like, if I'm not worried about what my kid's doing, what are they getting? And there is that feel of that kind of, hands off parents, you can come to the programs, but, if you ask, and we were in the system and we still had fear of, if we bring this up, will my kid pay for it? Right. Those are real things. Those are elephants in the room that I think we need to address. But the other piece of that is I'm in charge of my child's education. One of the things that's going on kind of both sides of the aisle, if you will, really to the ends of the spectrum on both sides, is the schools are this or the schools are that. The schools are a vehicle to help you educate your kids. Right. And so, I need to have a voice in who's teaching them, how they're teaching them. As a principal, people would come in with very legitimate concerns. And I said, I get that concern, but these rules are built for 930 kids, not your precious little baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't always say precious little baby, but sometimes I thought it. We're just going to
Right.
say, yeah. I had some precious little other words too for some of those kids, but
Right.
people are like, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, you've never had 930 middle school kids. You have all kind of words for those guys sometimes. But that system is in place to kind of benefit, the public being, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a right to go in and say, this is what I'd like to see, and how can I do that? And then, so when we talk about getting a good start, we kind of have some things that, we can address, and we can bring those up now, or we can talk about those in a bit. But yeah, it comes down to what are the things you said structure, which is what structure. School structure is great. You got to get up. I mean, it's somewhere in the middle. We're sick of it. Why do I got to get up every morning, drag my kids out? I got to make breakfast. We got to find the backpacks. We got that chaos every morning. There's a lot of ways to stay away from that chaos, or at least manage it. And so, if you want, we can kind of go to that, or I can, if you have another question about that structure.
Yeah, I just, in my home, the challenges are normally around those entries and exits. It's, do you have your things gathered? Did you forget this? I'm getting the call now. He forgot his backpack, or he forgot his lunch.
Yeah.
We really are a big natural consequence family here, and we do training. We create a checklist. You didn't get everything on your checklist. You didn't ask yourself, do I have everything before I leave the door?
Right.
And you forgot it.
Yeah, I'm not bringing you your lunch.
I'm sorry. You're going to have to talk to somebody. Yeah, you won't.
You're not going to die. You're going to be upset. You're going to be upset with everybody but yourself.
Yep.
And if you didn't turn in your homework or your project, not the end of the world. This is how we learn. Yes, I'm disappointed you didn't get it. I'm not disappointed in you, but I don't have to be disappointed in you, because I'm going to let you sit in that. I'm going to let you,
right.
And that was a lesson I had to learn, even as a parent, as my kids were coming up. It's like, they're not going to die. A lot of times we're so wrapped up in what people think of us based on our kids.
Oh, 100%.
That is the challenge. And I think if we can ever get parents past that,
yeah,
I think it's more moms than dads. Dads still do it, particularly when we get into, sometimes in athletics, sometimes in different things. But sometimes dads kind of almost don't care. Like, no, dude, you need to kind of care about what's going on here. It's going to be good. But a lot of that, you're exactly right on entry and exit of what is that? Number one, if we just get one thing today, it's bedtime.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to have a bedtime, and we need to stick with it. And there are rules as a child. And there is a time, like you talked about having a child in high school, 10th grade, maybe not, 11th and 12th grade, I would kind of take most of that off the table, because we're 2 years away from them having to manage that themselves. You've done the training and shown them the value of what it looks like to go to bed early and get up at what the morning looks like. Kids are still going to push it. There's not a college kid out there that just, went to bed every night at 9:30 and procrastinate till the end. That's all college is, to show you how stupid your ideas are, and to show you that mom and dad were right. By the end of 4 years, it's like, what made you successful? Well, I went back to what I was taught back in those times. But bedtime and a structure around that bedtime, not just yell. There's so many people, young dads of young kids particularly, what I do about bedtime. And I'm like, first off, you've got to be intentional, and that may be the hardest thing you do all day, but you set that structure, you set that time, and you do everything you can to get to it, knowing that when you got a school program, you got a practice, you got a family gathering, whatever, you're not going to make it every time, but every time it's available, you hit that bedtime.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised by parents that kind of didn't do that. Like, we'd get to stay up till 9:30, 10. Can we watch the news? Yeah. Oh, somebody's on Carson. That's how old I am. Can we watch that? Right. Yeah. And which they shouldn't have. They should not have it on. My wife was raised in a much better structure that way. And so our kids started going to bed at 8. And and I'm like, I get it. It's kind of nice, but she's kind of uptight. But we just kept seeing great results. And then as they got older, it was 9. And then, like I said, mid to late high school, it's like, do what you got to do to do your job. You need a job. You got band, you got soccer, you got whatever you got. And then also you're in advanced classes. So you got to learn to manage that. Also knowing that They weren't going to Harvard. Not that they weren't smart enough. That was not their deal. They didn't want to do that.
Right.
But they were now responsible, like you're talking about with your son, of these are the consequences. This is what you can do. But that bedtime, because the morning gets better. We could talk all day about organizing things, which I think is handy in the morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's where our backpack always goes. Let's check the homework. Let's do all that. If you have all that in place, but the kids are not getting up in a good way, forget it.
Yeah.
And so getting to bed, getting the rest, being able to calmly as a parent get in there and go, hey, it's time to get up. Breakfast is on the table, or grab your breakfast or get dressed. You just have that methodology. One of the things that's famous in my household is a crinkling water bottle, because little brother was, in high school by himself. Big brother went through high school, and then little brother followed right behind him. So when we have one kid at home that doesn't drive yet, mom's got to get him to school before she gets to school, and he doesn't want to get out because he's a freshman, or he doesn't want to get out of bed. And she would go in and toss some water on him, not buckets, but take a water bottle and like, hey, get up. I told you 3 times, get up. And then she started coming in and crinkling the water bottle like it's coming, and he would jump out.
Right.
He's 26 right now, and I promise you, every once in a while, when he stays at our house, my wife to go get him up in the morning, and she lets him sleep to whenever, but she goes in. He still has PTSD from a crinkled water bottle. I promise you.
That's great.
And I'm not trying to traumatize your kid, but it was that thing of this getting to bed and getting up is important for you to be successful. So I think that's one of the bigger deals.
I think I love that you're connecting this dot. And for me in my personal life, this has been so important. In my professional life, this has been so important. And now we're talking about the parental role, but connecting the dots that the morning starts the night before.
Right.
The day starts yesterday. You know what I mean? The week starts Sunday. That's how these things work. Like it all starts the night before. We got to go one click off to get our target. And, I love this idea of having, for me, I call them ritual. We call it a ritual,
right,
our evening ritual. And it doesn't have to be, just robotic, not fun. It can actually be a very beautiful, sweet thing. For us, we use what are called when-then routines, which means when your obligations are complete, then you get to have the privileges. Right. So for example, when your teeth are brushed, you're in pajamas, you're under the covers, and you got yourself a glass of water, you're under the covers, and you've chosen your book, then I'm going to come in, read to you, cuddle with you, and spend some time with you. So they've got a little list they've got to get through. Those are the obligations, the not so fun stuff. Then they get to have those privileges. That's the fun stuff. And same thing in the morning. In the morning, hey, once you've got your teeth brushed, hair brushed, your backpack and shoes are by the door, and you've got everything you need for school, then you can have your smoothie, your breakfast, your bowl of cereal, whatever that might be. So they're going to get to that as soon as they get it done. Now, if they don't do it in the time frame that we have, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
Hate that
in the car.
I love you and it's time to go. And that's just the way it is. And then they learn from that mistake that, hey, I really don't want to miss breakfast. Now, will they kick, scream, tell you you're a monster, tell you they're going to call the cops on you, you're the worst parent ever? Yes, probably.
Yes. I missed my smoothie. Call the cops.
Yeah.
Get my smoothie.
You don't feed your son. No, I feed my son plenty. You're the meanest parent ever. Now, the next day they know you're serious. That's what my experience has been.
Well, and that's the thing too. And so, it's crazy to have some of those conversations. And in my own situation as a kid, we would get up, can we turn on the TV? Yeah. And then we wouldn't get ready. And my parents were just so mad at us. And I'm like, reflection is like, you turn the TV on again. Right. It's that intentionality. And so our TV, we never had it on in the morning for our kids because there was no point. We're all going to school. Everybody in here is like, if dad's not already 2 hours away talking at a school, or headed that way, he's here and he's about to go to work. I would take my kids to school every morning. I didn't have a program and, and those kind of things. And my wife, of course, our kids went to where she taught, or then she changed teaching so she could take the kid that we no longer had our driver. She could take him into town because we're in a small town. But it's exactly that. And people are like, I just can't get them to quit watching TV and get ready. I'm like, well, turn off the TV. And you would think that was like, did you say beat my child with a bat? I'm like, no,
Right.
don't turn on the TV. Right. And lay their clothes out. We had some really good friends when our baby boy or our first kid was like 1, they had 2 boys and they actually got everything ready for bed, did their homework, did all the rituals that were great. And the boys, like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, would put on their clothes for the next day and then go to bed.
Right.
When they got up in the morning, they had to put on their shoes, brush their teeth, comb their hair.
Yeah.
Working mom too, had breakfast ready for them to eat in the car because they had about a 10-minute drive to school. And it's like, well, that works. If that works for you, that's fine. But there's no chaos. The kid's prepared. The kid's not stressed out. So we used to do a program. We're actually bringing it back. We used to call it, we stole it. So it was called Smiling Dads when we stole it. We're calling it Frontline Fathers, of dads being out in front of the school every morning to direct traffic and high five kids. So we were doing that when my guys were little. Yeah, it's a really neat, because dads have 7:30 to 8. They might not have a full day to give to, being at school.
Right.
But they have that, I can take you to school on Thursday. I'll be there to do that. And the kids love it, and it really helps the school. But we would go and I had some of my dads that, being a school guy, working in some really tough situations, I had some of my dads, I said, you know what? We don't have anybody high-fiving the kids coming off the bus. Would you guys go be our bus guys today? Let's go high-five those kids coming in. And they were blown away because they saw that some of these kids were crammed into clothes, hairs everywhere. They're they're coming out of a house of chaos onto a bus of chaos.
Right.
And they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah, we have a ton of kids sitting next to your kid that is going through that chaos and everything. You have to understand that's part of the challenge of the school, but also your own kid in that classroom.
Absolutely.
Is you've done all the prep, but there's this kid that nobody told to go to bed. Nobody got them up in a timely manner. Nobody fixed them breakfast. Nobody knew where their clothes were. Nobody, and then when I start laying that out, everybody said, that's atrocious. And I'm like, yeah, but where are we if we're not intentional about that? Like you said, you can get uptight, you can get robotic, but the bottom line is, what is your intention? Like, where's your backpack? Did you do all your homework? Bring me your folder. And that's not what we want to do as a parent sometimes. We just want to sit down, and why can't the kids, well, it's hard to stay up and do that and get all those pieces taken care of, or it's hard to deal with that in the morning when you've not done any of it. Choose your hard. That's just the bottom line for your kids to not just be successful, just to not lose your mind.
Yeah.
That helps your kid be successful, but you're no longer crazy.
Absolutely. I found that trying to use some tone or some humor in a lot of this is very helpful, because yes, if you, for example, are saying, hey, where's your homework? Did you do your homework? Why did, those kind of, like, having that almost like you're the cop that's investigating. You're the
right. I don't expect that you did your homework.
I'm the investigative cop that believes that you actually committed a murder on your homework and you did not do anything you say you did, that kind of thing. So, some of the fun stuff that I do is, like, I'll kind of go, woo, homework police, like, we engaged homework police. Where is your backpack? Like, kind of trying to make it fun to let them know, like, hey, we're just here. We're just going to make sure that you're good to go. We've got everything done. That way you can get onto your free time. And I know I'm being the homework boss. I'm not being the fun guy. So I try to make myself into a more fun character. Yes, sometimes we have to have serious conversations. Hey, bud, I'm inside the account right now. I'm seeing that this grade is dropping. Can you tell me what's going on? Is everything okay? And one of the things I've learned to do is, hey, here's my role. My role is to not police your grades, but my role is to help coach you to get to the better grade.
Right.
And you're super capable. Like, there's no reason that you can't hit these grades. So when you're not hitting them, that tells me that something's amiss. There's something that's not going on that we need to just talk about to help you get there. Now I know you have you have stuff that's even prepared to help these guys. I think you mentioned that there are 10 things that we can do to have a successful year. Can we get into some of that?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick. We'll see what kind of special hocus pocus we have here. I'm going to run this across. That's all the stuff you could have had. Look at that. There's so much. We might have a bonus deal one of these days. We'll go back to.
Yeah, I was gonna say one day what we should do is you and I should get on and have you do a full presentation.
We can do all of that. So this is actually the end. Look at there. There's my face over there. Okay, so let's talk about this. There we go. So this is a handout that we have. We do it in English and Spanish, and every month we put out 10 things strong fathers or strong families can do to help their kids be a better mathematician, a better reader, making the transition to middle school, which is near and dear to my heart. I actually had a conversation right before this with the principal. We're going to do what we're calling an academic checkup that first 6 weeks of school for sixth graders, making that transition into middle school. We can't just go, here's all the stuff. Have a good year. Hope you make it. We're going to get with parents and go, hey, what's gone on so far? Now, what do we need to do to readjust to get ready for that? So that we have these available every month, and I'm going to give your guys a chance to get these resources. We'll send them to them every month. We have a calendar with some of these activities and things. So we're going to give them a lot of stuff. But this is the first thing. And then let's talk real quick. Organize all of the necessary school information. Now, a lot of that is now online, but you still get that huge stack of paper sent in at the first of the year. And when you get it, fill out all your forms, do all the stuff to comply with the school because they need all that information. That's how they get funding. That's how they keep up with stuff. They need all that stuff because there's a bunch of kids there. Yeah, it's a pain, but we need it. Schools have gotten much better. A lot of it's online. You can transfer now. But organizing all the information, you notice I have phones, I have notebooks, and I have papers, and I have computer. If you use Evernote, if you use Google Drive, if you use whatever you use, get all that stuff in a place that, and then particularly if you have multiple kids, right? You need all the stuff about your kid. Who are their teachers and how many teachers do they have? What are the policies? You know, I talk to teachers. I train teachers all the time. And I'm like, who reads the student handbook? And they're like, everybody. I'm like, nobody. Student handbook. The only people that read the student handbook are teachers trying to nail a kid, teachers that feel like they're about to be in trouble because of what they did around a kid or a parent that's trying to get out of trouble. That's the only people that read the student manual, right? And I don't think you ought to have to know all of it, but get all that information and have that in the same spot. So, okay, I need to really meet with your teacher. What's their conference? Well, try to get in on the school on the end of the day. If you have all of that electronically or in a folder, that's just going to save you so much stuff. And instead of going, I wonder what is the policy? Like I said, we don't look up the policy till we want to fix it or yell it. You know, we want to be adversarial one way or the other. And it's like, no, just what is the policy so you can use it to your advantage for the sake of your kid? So gather up all that information and, you know, have a place where you can get it because we just kind of put it in pilot. This one sounds weird when I say it. Learn everything you can about all of your child's teachers. Okay, first off, if you're a single dad, don't be a creep. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about, hey, what's up with your teacher? We do have that every once in a while in our schools, but what is their policy? How do they want to work? When do they do tutorials? What's their best way how do they prefer to be communicated with? Or, you know, is it emails? Is it phone calls? Is it website? What is it? And everything you can learn about this teacher. Now, don't go to the parking lot at your school or Facebook and go, what's the deal with this teacher? Because you're not going to get what really could be a lot of good stuff because you're only going to get the people that have had a negative situation. It's not like you don't need reviews, but the review about their kid, you're like, well, I wouldn't like your kid either. Or, you know, your kid's kind of got some challenges or, you know, yeah, but learn what you can about each one of your kids' teachers, make that phone call, write that email. And this is really important for dads because whether you're in the same house with mom or you're not in the same house with mom, one of the reasons we do this work is schools still are preferential to moms. They're the go-to person, all of this. And that's because that's how schools think. It's a lot of mainly female dominated in elementaries. A lot of secondary principals are female. And so school has now gone to females. That's why we've done this for 20 years to get dads more involved. But the other piece is dads have also handed that off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is like when dads show up for bring your dad to school day, the teachers kind of give them, they kind of, you see that smirk. They're like, what's your teacher's name? And that sounds embarrassing, but it's like, I have moms that come in and do the same thing because we met them and I'm sending you to I know the school name and the address because I take you there every day. And we talk about your teacher, right? So no, not just what their name is, but dads need to get all that information. And sometimes it's hard to work through mom because mom goes, I have it. Dad has the right, but also has the responsibility to know what's up, to know how he can contact that teacher, him or her, and ask questions on their, I'm working with my kid on math. I'm not going to go through mom to get that information. I'm going to have the phone number, the email, or whatever. And so dad needs to know about that teacher, regardless of what the situation is, right? We set a bedtime. We definitely, and stick to it. Thursday night's not different. Friday night's not different. I think we've talked about that. This is something you spoke about a while ago. Establish a homework time and stick to it. So not everybody has this kind of standard schedule where everybody's home at 6 and then we do this and then we eat dinner. I don't know that a lot of us have any kind of standard schedule during the week, right?
No.
But what we do need to understand, exactly like what you said, is what's our checklist? Do you have any homework? Okay, kids are working hard all day. Like when you go into today's classroom, they start off from the first get-go and they hit it hard. They don't have as much recess as they should. Testing has a ton of pressure behind it. Our high school kids are now getting college. A lot of our high school kids are graduating with associate degrees because they're not coasting through high school like some of us did. They're doing, like I said, they have an associate's degree when they graduate high school. So they're working hard. First graders, 12th graders, they're all working hard. So they do need some downtime when they get home. You might need to structure that to give them a break and then say, okay, what's your homework? What you do this? Here's the big issue. Parents say, my kids say they don't have homework. A lot of that is true because of kids that don't have support at home. If you're a teacher and give homework and half your kids aren't getting it done, it's hard to do that because you feel like you're penalizing the kids that don't have support at home. So you'll see a lot of that homework is either makeup work or you didn't do it in class when I gave you time. And then some more rigorous classes may have that. But that's why you need to know the teacher. Do they have homework on a regular basis or not? What are their grades? Are they keeping up with that? So let's say they don't have homework. Okay, so for a young kid, young elementary, you don't have any homework. No, all of it's done. She didn't send any assignments. He didn't send any assignments. Okay, so you're going to read for 30 minutes. No, you're going to read for 30 minutes because number one, that's a fantastic thing to do for your kid's education. And if they don't like reading, well, then they're going to find out how to do it for 30 minutes every day if they don't have homework. If they have homework and they're trying not to do it, but they know they're still going to be stuck doing something, whether they like it or not, and read, then they're going to figure out, you know what, I might as well do this. Now, that takes time and training and consequences. Mm-hmm. But by establishing a homework time, I don't have any homework. Fine, this is the time that you either do your homework or you read.
I love that.
No, that's what you do that because, and there will be some kids, I was probably one of those, like, oh, I can read. So I'm just going to read. Well, no, you're supposed to do your homework. It's hard to tell. My kids were the same way. It's like, quit reading and do some other stuff. It's like, what kind of parent, particularly an educator, is telling their kid that? Like, you're not getting the stuff done, besides your reading. And sometimes that was my wife. I'm like, hey, you got stuff to do. Quit reading. This is something you talked about. And this is also where you can use that humor, but also you don't have to, you're not going to come across as a police all the time because you're just not always fixing stuff. Right.
Right. That's
every night
what
to
I
check in with your child. Yeah. Because it's like, where's the homework? Da, 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 da. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you get all your homework done? How was school today? We have a calendar that we'll send to your dads of questions to ask your kids every day instead of what'd you do at school today? Like, tell me, we don't have anything to talk about. We don't have any homework. Okay. But what were 2 ways that your teacher used light today? Like, what? How did your teacher use light? Well, what do you mean? That question. Well, we have a projector, or they turned the lights off so we could see the projector, or they it's like, and your kids began to think, okay, what's my next question? How many steps is it from your classroom to the bathroom? What? How many steps is it? Do you know? I don't know. Okay, well, tomorrow.
Yeah. Walk
And
them off.
it's just that check-in of how it now, if you have sons, it's always nothing and no,
Yeah.
you'll get some kind of gross story. Usually, if there's a gross story, a boy will tell you. Girls will tell you everything except what went on in the classroom. Here's what she said. Here's what they did in the hall. And this is second grade. This is not like just middle school and high school, right? But check in every day. And it doesn't have to be this huge, I always call it the Ward Cleaver study moment. Like, right, you don't have to have all this, the great pregame speech every day. But it's like, so how did it go? How did you feel? Right? Did you seemed a little grumpy this morning? How'd the end of the day rest? Or you seemed a little tired, or you seemed this when you got in the car. What's going on? And it doesn't have to be a therapy session, but it's like, how was school today? How were you nice to somebody? What was something that really made you sad or scared? That sounds crazy, but our kids need to have that opportunity. So there we go. That check-in, we need to do that every day. And so, and to meet every night is just like you said, at bedtime, over dinner, which we'd love to have dinner with our kids every night, or we'd love that it was possible. Connect with other parents in the same grade. That's a big deal that we do with schools, is we try to get the dads to know each other. And I kind of freak them out, because I'm like, do you realize you could be in the same room with your future in-laws? And I'm like,
Oh, boy.
And I'm like, yeah. So you got you right now. You're like, what? Ask these guys, how many of you went to this school? And a ton of them, I'm in a lot of rural communities too. A lot of dads like, yeah, I went to this school. How many of you didn't go to this school, but married somebody that went to this school or school district? Yeah. How many of you met your spouse at this school? And then there's, a good handful of those guys. Like, this is where our kids are navigating the world. Yep. You're raising your kids together. Our rule was any kid could come to our house. Until you really blew it, you could come to our house anytime. We were out in the country, so we weren't like super fun central. We didn't have trampolines and swimming pools and all that stuff, but kids would come in together. Having two nerd sons, we've had, I think, the most, maybe 12 computers hooked to a network in our house. It was so hot. 12 computers running at the same time, gaming, and pizza, fat, sweaty boys eating pizza on computer, but I knew those kids. My kids couldn't go to just anybody's house until I knew who the parents were. And we have lifelong friends. My wife and I were band parents for 8 years. We're still going to weddings of these kids that are now adults, right? And we see their parents, and we have a lot of that because we raised our kids together. So it's a great resource, but it's also a great support to get to know those parents. And then set a time to meet with the teacher regularly. This sounds insane, but it's so valuable. Now that we do Zoom, now that we're better at Zoom because of the pandemic, we've had this tool for a while, but you don't have to do a teacher conference in the middle of the day by going to the building. You can ask the teacher, when is your conference period? Can we do a Zoom so we can talk? And I just want to check in on my kid. The only time the teachers call us, or we call the teacher, is when there's already a problem.
Yeah.
But if you set it on your calendar as a dad or as a parent and say, okay, the 6 week, here's the 3 weeks. Every time I get a 3 weeks progress report, I'm going to set a meeting the next week with that teacher. I may go in at breakfast and see if I can meet with them that morning, or I may set up a Zoom, or I may take off work a little early and be there at 3:30 to talk after school, whatever works for you and or that teacher. Teachers are trained, if they'll do it, to make positive phone calls at the first of the year and say, I'm your kid's teacher. I enjoy having them in class. They're really funny. They're a lot of fun. They're this or that. They are struggling with this, but I think we've got that. But that positive phone call makes a world of difference for a parent. They're like, oh, this person doesn't hate my kid. Like my kid thinks they hate my kid, right?
Right.
Particularly middle school. Everybody hates me. It's like, no, they don't. You just want you to stay awake and pay attention. It's just crazy like that. The same thing goes for parents. If you, without being crazy helicopter parent, like, did they do okay today? But it's like, how are they doing this 6 weeks? What are their academic issues? What are you seeing among their peers? And I think a very important question is, how are they treating you? Is my child being respectful? Because it gives a teacher an opportunity to say, sometimes they do this, or here's somebody they're running around with and I can't, they can't necessarily say a name. They shouldn't, maybe sometimes, but it's like they're running with some kids that I think is not the kind of influence you want them to be. Or when these are great kids, but when they get together, they feed off of each other in a negative way. So I haven't told you, but I need to tell you, I've separated them because of that. Because when this comes up later that these kids did something at lunch or recess or whatever, like, remember when I told you, again, great kids, but it's a bad mix, or it's a bad mix in my class now, right? Those kind of things. But this one I think is super important. It's super easy now that we've got all the tools that we have. So we don't have to take out the middle of the day. We don't have to ask the teacher to stay after much, because they've got a life and family too. But set that time up around those report cards, around those 3-week reports. This is more important than people know. Set up a homework spot. If you've got little kids that have way too much stuff in their room, then they need to be at the dinner table. Right. Let me back that up a little bit. So, and the dinner table needs to be conducive to getting that done. If little brother is doing homework at the table, that doesn't mean big sister gets to watch TV where the kid can see it. If we're going to be serious about this, that's another thing about setting homework time is everybody's sitting around the table while dad or mom is fixing dinner, or dad and mom is doing their own work to catch up. And we all sit around the table and do our homework. Right. And we know we're doing that from 6 to 7, or we're doing that from 7 to 8 before bath time. I'm done with my homework. Okay, you jump in the bath first, come back out here, and then tell me when you're ready, and I will read together. Or, but have a spot, scissors, paper clips, staples, notebook paper. Oh my gosh, have notebook paper, a box of pencils, just a basic kit. Because I remember as a kid scrounging for supplies to do my stuff. Now my kids had 2 teachers at home, so I don't know that they ever lacked for any of that. But it was part of the reason we did this is we knew they would need that stuff, right? So set up a homework spot, supply it, get them in a good spot. Don't let them sit on their bed. Don't let them sit in front of the TV. I don't think it's wrong for certain kids need a headset. That's fine if you're monitoring that. If they're wearing a headset and listening to music, but they're staying busy, let them go. That's how I work now as an adult. If I'm writing anything of consequence, I've got to have music in the background because I'm ADD, binaural sounds, Bach, different, there's different music that help kids. If you've got a kid struggling with attention, there's some really good resources out there. Free to Focus, binaural beats on Spotify.
Yeah, I love binaural beats.
Yeah, and
use that for meditation.
Yeah, and so there's something that helps kids. So I've been like an old white guy most of my life, even when I wasn't old, right? But when I work out, I listen to heavy metal, serious gangster rap. I mean, and so Spotify says the things you play the most, right? Because I have a very varied music I'm very eclectic on my music, but that's my playlist for working out.
That's
so
great.
The most music I listen to is that daily or weekly. You can tell it's not probably daily workout, but weekly workout. And so then I published my stuff to my kid. Like 2019, I sent it to my 2 sons. They're already adults. And here's my top 100 songs of the year. And they were both wrote me back, Dad, are you okay? Are you angry? Are you homicidal? I'm like, no, but Eminem gets me through it. NWA gets me through it. KRS-One gets me through it. Metallica gets me through it. Whatever. Yeah. I have music for everything. There's no reason kids can't do that, but you got to make sure it's working for them as opposed to that. They might say TV. I've never seen TV really work for a kid. Background noise of some sort. Every kid's got headphones. It's all good.
Right.
A morning checklist. You talk about a night checklist.
This is huge.
Yeah. And it's just, and we try a million things, right? We're like, you got to have a board and you got to have stars, and that's fine if you want to do it. But where's your backpack? Where did we load the homework the night before? Because it's not a good time to do it in the morning. Right. For most people. Now, some people, I didn't get up that early. I get up a lot earlier now than I did. But some people are. They're 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and they get all the lunches made. They check the homework. They sign off on the folders, whatever it is. But that checklist doesn't have to be 12 things. It's like your kids are going to find their shoes. They do have their clothes laid out or hung up somewhere, right? Or late, whatever. But that checklist is, do you have your backpack? Do you have your lunch? Do you have your stuff for the afternoon practice or whatever you have going on today? because I'm not coming back home and getting it.
Right.
And it can be very much a paper list or a whiteboard list or move the token, whatever it is. But have that morning checklist so everything is not left to chance every day, and you just kind of hope you get it, because it doesn't work for you or your kids. And then this last one, it goes back to you kind of, crinkled water bottles was a strategy that we used to get this kid out of bed, but it's still something that we joke about. It's something that, like I said, maybe wasn't too much trauma for Josh, but enjoy the ride. I sit back as a dad of adults now and watch people raising their kids, and there's a lot of it's like, oh, I'm glad I'm through that. And there's part of it that I miss. Some of it's even what you're talking about, structure. Like, I get to do things now I never got to do when I had kids at home in school, but I also miss that. I miss the kids. My wife, when we go see my nieces and nephew, in their programs, they live locally. It reminds me of, I see the tired, right? I'm like, I remember trying to get everybody fed and trying to get, where's your white shirt for the program? And we got to get you there by 6:30 and all the stuff that we do just to get, 5 minutes of video or whatever we do that for.
Right.
But so many great memories and so many good things and so many things for you. That's where traditions get set. That's where you build your bond with your kids. That's where your kids learn over time, and maybe even more so as an adult. My parents really were there for me in all these times. I didn't know that when I was 16. So my youngest, my oldest did some of this. My youngest did this. So when he got into middle school, he said, man, when I was a fifth grader, I was a punk, huh? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I'd say punk. I probably would have, but I'm like, yeah, we knew that's what fifth graders did, and you're good. Then he got out of middle school when he was in high school. He goes, man, when I was in middle school, God, middle school kids are just the worst, huh? And we're like, yeah, they kind of are. It's all good. Not being able to tell him, you're in high school and you're not so great now. But, and then he got into college, and he goes, man, when I was in high school. And then when he finally got into college, he kind of realized this cycle, and he goes, Dad, when I get out of college, am I going to, you're going to reflect back on that. You're going to reflect back on your 20s. You're going to reflect on your first job. I said, yeah, but that's what growth is, right? And the cool part about being involved in your kids' education is that not only do you get to see the fruit of it and get to see them be successful, but it's what families do. And it's what you want to do as a family. I had like some remorse that I didn't think I read to my kids enough, because I didn't feel like I had a lot of memories of this really sweet, all this sweet time together. And then we began to talk. And it's like, yeah, Dad, remember you read this to us, and you read this, and you did this book on CD while I was reading it. Because, when they're middle school, high school, they're starting to read, Lord of the Rings and, some really good literature in their upper English classes that I may or may not have read, but I would keep up with them on CD so we could have conversations about them, not to check their homework. But I didn't want to, I kind of wanted to stay impressive to my kid. Like, look, I kind of know, what that's about, because I was doing it on CD while I traveled. I can keep up with you, but they reminded me, yeah, you read to that. And so I think sometimes we're looking for that hallmark moment, and there's just a lot of regular, everyday, get it done, stack those days, stack those habits together where all that success comes out. But it's because those simple little things that you do every day, every week in an intentional way that makes a difference for your kids.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. That was an incredible list. And one of the distinctions I've heard recently that I really love, and I guess it's been a while now, I say recently, but it's coming up more and more recently. You get to, not you have to, you get to, you get to make your kids breakfast. You get to help them get to school. You get to help them with their homework. I know it doesn't seem like it right now, but we get to do this. It's a privilege, and one day we're going to miss some of it. So just like some of us at the end of the school year, we're like, I can't wait to get back into school. But when it's going on, they're like, I can't wait for school to be over.
Right.
So enjoy the ride. What a great way to end that message. And I love this list of the teacher questions. What's the best way to contact you? Will there be regular homework? Boy, that's a good question. No, we never have homework in that class. Really? That's not what she told me.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Why,
um,
if they have homework, that means they're talking in class
yeah.
and not doing,
Oh,
and
so you
teachers,
didn't,
and you
you
need to
don't have,
know that.
you're
Yeah.
right. That you don't have homework in the class. So what went on in the classroom today?
Right. Yeah.
And then what's when's your conference period? What a great question. When do you do your conference periods? And then making sure you can set up a regular time to meet with them. That's great. Those are all fantastic questions. And what a great list. So where can they find that list?
So yeah, let me go here as we kind of finish up. So real quick form, just your name, email. We do want to know about the ages of your kids because they can tell us what resources to send you. But it's at strongfathers.live/dadly. So
Sweet.
hopefully that's easy to remember. We are live, right? We're doing this live with you and I, and then Dadley. So I know you're out of Austin. I'm born and raised Texan, and we started Strong Fathers in 2003. And George W. had run for president, not long before that. And Karl Rove, before George W. ran, he went out, and this was fairly new at the time. He ran out and bought every domain that could possibly be used. George W., G.W. Bush, G. Bush, W. Bush, everything. George sucks. George W. sucks. George W. Bush sucks.
Oh
Karl Rove bought 350
domains.
domains. And so we have a string of domains. If you want to know how to do business with us, that's strongfathers.com. We're kind of behind on our website, but strongfathers.org will get you some resources. But to sign up, this is strongfathers.live. I've got net.training. I mean, you name it. I used to have .ninja, but nobody believed it. So I got rid of that one.
Ninja. Have you ever sold a domain? Bought and sold a domain?
So if you go to fathering.com, that gets you to us. And I bought that at a really great rate. And people have tried to buy it, but they won't tell me what they're going to use for it. And what I refuse to do is give out something that I think will be illicit or less than wholesome, let's say.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, but yeah, I have a one word domain that I bought actually before I start. Strong Fathers was probably going to be fathering.com because I bought that domain for a song. But when people find it, they go to us, and that's all good. But yeah, strongfathers.com, fathering.com will get you there.
Those are great URLs, by the way.
Yeah. And, so like to .live.training, it's funny how we've had to, I told you my IP lawyer lives down there not too far from you, and we've had to call people and go, hey, that's a trademark. You can't use that. And I'm like, yeah, but it's great. We know that. That's why we did it. Now, can we help you? I'm all about cooperating, and we've kind of loaned those out or let us refer people to you, or, you can call that program, but we want you to go through our kind of training or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, it's what we started. Like I said, we're in our 20th school year. We're excited. If they want, they can go to strongfathers.com or .org, go to the contact page. If you want programs in your kid's school, if you want to know how you might be able to do it, we've got some of those opportunities. And so we just want to get the word out, and these things work. We averaged 140 dads per program, over 85 programs last year in schools. And so the dads, these guys know that are listening to us today. They want information and they want to be engaged. And our job is to get the schools to understand that and then kind of prove it to them. When you fill up the cafeteria, they can't help but know that these dads really want to be involved in a kid's education.
Let's say for me, for example, I live over here in Travis County. We have a great school here at Lake Travis. How do I get my school to, consider this? What would be some steps I could take as a dad to get involved?
Get with me. Go to the contact page. Let me see if I can do this real quick. I can just because we can either give you information, because it's got high school, middle school. Also, there's different funding that would be more appropriate for one or the other. But Mike at strongfathers.com. And if you wanted to be the guy that did it, or get a team together to do it as volunteers, or like I said, federal money pays for these programs. That's kind of how we make our rent is federal. There are federal guidelines that require schools to really engage parents, and schools really struggle with that. So we're kind of the entryway for. It used to be parents are engaged, but dads aren't. Let's get dads as part of that parent engagement. And now we're finding that not just through COVID, but through other, we've just kind of moved away from parents. And so we're kind of bringing that back, and it's starting with the dads as opposed to kind of adding dad now.
Yeah.
So, and every school is different. And so, what are ways that we can do that? We work with early childhood programs. We work with a ton of elementaries and middle schools. And we also have high school programs, typically for at-risk kids, because we're like, we got to get this stuff fixed before you can graduate. But we have programs all from 0 to 18 years old, actually, of dads of those kids. And so anything we can do, hit us up at the .live dadly, because we'll send you resources. And that's another way you can communicate with us once you sign up for that.
That's great. Mike, thank you so much for your time today and being with us and dropping some of these wisdom on it, and your humor. You're a fantastic presenter, and you're extremely funny.
Well, I had 2 boys. I was a middle school principal. I've been married 33 years. If I'm even available to talk to you, it's because I have
right.
And I do work with a lot of young dads, and sometimes we're not young dads, but dads of young kids. And I see it, and it's exactly what it is. And I get it. And, I work with 10 to 20,000 dads across the country every year, and we're all broken. We're all tired. And so the thing I would tell you, and I tell all my dads, is like, it's as hard as you think it is. I'm not going to tell you it's not as hard as you think it is. And yes, you can make it less hard, but all you're doing is choosing your heart, because it is absolutely the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I'm going to cry. And yet it was also the hardest thing I've ever done. And our dads out there, we need to support each other. And that's what we're trying to do, is find ways through programs, through community organizations like schools, to get all the dads the support they need, because when dads have that support, their kids turn out great. So that's what I want to do. And I appreciate what you're doing to that same end. So we were very privileged to be here, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check that out at www.strongfathers.live/dadly. Sign up, get that list, that top 10 list, and reach out to Mike if you want to get him involved with your school and getting a program together for dads. And be sure to like, subscribe, and as always, have a beautiful and blessed day, and we'll talk to you soon.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to BeDadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.